Who are they
Okay.
selling? That's the first question. Who are they selling?
Yeah, that's a good one.
That aside, now Satoshi Nakamoto actually knew that you cannot outrightly fight the government, because if you stand up to fight the government, they will do everything to cripple you. They
Yeah.
knew. So what they simply did was that, okay, we can actually align with the government. It's fine. Let's speak good about the government. Let's not fight them. But while we are doing that, let's create an alternative technology that brings about currency and financial decentralization globally. Henceforth,
Mm,
making people able to carry out transactions without depending on traditional banking ecosystem for that.
mm,
So what they did was that they came up with a technology that actually challenged the status quo without outrightly challenging the status quo. And one of the biggest strategy they one of the biggest strategy they employed was to disappear and leave the scene, because
mm,
they knew that if we disappear and leave the scene, these people cannot clamp us down. And so this system we have built will be more trusted. And because this
mm.
system we have built cannot be clamped down by the government, it can transactions can only be traced. But because it's working based on distributed networks in the ecosystem, government cannot crash the entire system just like they do to other networks. And so,
Mm-hmm.
because of that, people started adopting it. And I'm sure they went
Yeah.
behind probably to actually sponsor education globally to educate people the importance of decentralized ecosystem, blockchain
Yeah.
technology. Just 15 years from now, countries are already legalizing it.
Mm, mm.
Most
That's
banks in Europe,
dramatic.
most
Yeah.
banks, most banks in Europe are already accepting this as legal tenders.
Yeah.
Nigeria recently passed a law that crypto can now be a legal tender, but
Mm.
strictly for startups who have SEC requirement, that's Security Exchange Commission
Yeah.
certification. And you must be closely monitored to ensure that you are not carrying out fraudulent activities.
Mm.
This alone highlights what I mean by rebellion, strategic rebellion, not
Yes.
violent rebellion, strategic rebellion that strategically challenges the status quo. And
Amazing.
that is it. Then, secondly, in
Amazing.
terms of critical thinking, most
Mm.
youth in Africa believe in most youth in Africa. This session might even surpass 1 hour actually for me and this.
Please go
Most youth,
ahead.
most youth in Africa are so lazy in thinking.
Mm.
Most youth in Africa are lazy in thinking, while some are visionaries, but the system has actually crushed their dreams.
Mm.
The system has outrightly crashed their dreams. So this now calls for critical thinking. Now, most youths believe that, okay, if I don't get this support, people doesn't need to support me. If I don't get into this accelerators program, people didn't. If
Mm.
I don't get this education, I wouldn't get to where I'm going to. But that is a flaw in the thinking alone.
Mm.
If you do not have a certification, if you do not have the certificate, there is what we call the non-traditional way of learning. Go out there. There are free courses online, Coursera certificates. Get these courses, learn them. Learn these courses. You don't need, even if you can't afford to pay for those certifications, get these courses, learn. Go online. When you go online, start talking about these things. Shout about these things. Start reach out to people online, offer free services, work for them. While you are
Mm.
doing that, you are thinking of the next step to take. How can I get into this ecosystem? How can I position my feet to the point that I become an authority, that when I'm ready, by the time I'm ready, I become a voice? People
Mhm.
feel you need to be an expert before you start talking about certain things. I'm officially 2 years in this ecosystem as a tech researcher.
Wow.
When I started researching, I joined TAB, the Transdisciplinary Agora for Future Discussion, as just a junior community manager.
Mm.
But I was actively coming up with strategy, because anywhere I find myself, I must ensure that I contribute value. I was actively coming up with different strategy aggressively. I don't need to be invited before I invite myself to an occasion. So because of my passion, I was noticed by the board. I was now brought on top to actually deputize our media arm as at then. Just
Mm.
a few months later, I was promoted to head the media team, which I brought about rebranding and a lot of things like that. And guess
Mm.
what? I started this whole thing without a single professional certificate.
Mm.
I started
Amazing.
this whole without a formal education. I
Mm.
was
Mm.
only aggressive. I had to challenge the status quo. But when I
Mm.
started, right now, I've gotten a lot of professional certificates already.
Yeah.
I've gotten
Amazing.
certificates already. So that is why I think critical thinking, you have to know that, okay, you have to start thinking of how to solve problems. What is your immediate challenge? The organization you are in, how do you solve these problems? We need these things.
Wow.
We need to think beyond. We need to think beyond the traditional product. Okay, our government are not providing these solutions for us. Okay, as a
Mm.
person, how can I come about these solutions? How can I do this? That is in the case of critical. People don't know these things.
Mm.
And that is one thing that fuels me. Today, currently, I'm opportunity to work with a lot of international organizations building
Mm.
multiple products. One of our products will be going live very soon. We are doing that
Amazing.
very soon.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that
We'll
stems
delve a little more into that. Mm. Go ahead. Go ahead. Please
that
don't let
stems
me
of
stop you.
critical
Yeah.
thinking and the problem mindset. And moreover, I'm really grateful for most institutions that are coming out today, incubators, accelerators program, a lot of sensitization organizations who are coming in to tell the youth, no, you can actually get this thing done. You have the potential, you have the brain power. You
Mm.
don't need to do you even if you have a startup idea, but you don't have a co-founder, because most innovators, they have issues with getting the reliable co-founders for their startups. If you don't have co-founders for your
Mhm.
startup, join communities. Pitch your idea
Yeah.
in those communities and ask who is interested in being a co-founder. Today, multiple incubators program, what they do is that they are just reaching out to startups. They need startups to join them, startup founders to join them, but they don't care if you are just there for just a year or 12 months or maybe 6 months. What they care is that you are passionate and you can devote a lot of time to learning and to groom your startup under their watch. That is
Mm.
what incubator is. Even if you do not have a co-founder, they don't mind bringing multi people across Africa or across the world that have almost similar ideas. They bring them
Mhm.
together and be like, okay, you guys should co-found this project under our watch. So
Mm.
there are many incubators program that connect co-founders together. Communities connect co-founders together. The first startup I founded in 2023, even though that startup failed, it failed. Yes, that
Mm.
startup failed. I got my co-founder from Facebook
Okay.
just by pitching my idea on Facebook. I got a co-founder from
But
Facebook.
but in terms of the long-term relationship, do you think that is safe, so to speak?
Okay, now in terms of long-term relationship, it depends on multiple parameters and metrics actually.
Mm.
If your co-founder has same level of passion and he sees himself in the same place or almost the same place as you see yourself in a few years from now, or he
Mm.
sees himself in a place and believes that building a startup with you is the avenue to get there, and you see
Mm.
yourself that same way as well, then there is a long-term impact. Currently, I'm actually the business development lead and the product manager for the Great Conversation Network.
Mm.
We are a media distribution firm, and one of our biggest goal is to connect Black founders globally. We run a podcast recently. You get now.
Wow.
So one of the conversations I had with one of my team member recently was, how do you source, how do you get to know, how do I get to know that this co-founder in my team is actually reliable? And I told him, ask her a few questions. And moreover,
Mm.
he told me a few things this co-founder said, and I told her, this is a red flag, this is a red flag, this is a red flag. You get, and this is
So
somebody
you're
that,
able to do that kind of analysis for founders, basically.
yes, yes, I'm able to do that actually because I've had a startup that failed. I've had a startup that failed in 2023. And
Mm.
after the whole thing, I sat down to analyze. I asked myself, I went through a lot of metrics and I realized why it failed. Even though as it stands now, I'm not a startup founder currently. I'm working for multiple organizations, but I'm brewing
Mm.
my startup Jammy currently. Jammy is more like an e-commerce that actually helps connect homegrown products in Africa to local buyers. Although we've not
Okay.
begun full-scale operation, but we are still on the testing phase right now
Okay.
locally. We are still on
That's
the
very
testing
interesting.
phase in Nigeria and in Kigali over there. So that's what we are doing. I don't have a
Mm.
co-founder. I'm a solo. I'm a sole founder for now, but I will be getting a co-founder later on as I get. But one of the things I get to find out is that co-founding goes beyond a lot of things.
Mm.
But I don't think we are ready for that conversation for now. Actually,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that was an interesting side.
yeah.
But
Thank you.
I like the point, this very strong points you've made around growing a company, around the corruption you talked about, what rebellion really means for you. Rebellion really means challenge the status quo with a new solution, and you have to do it strategically. And I like the example from Satoshi, who basically launched Bitcoin 15 years ago now. It's amazing how quickly time has passed. In 2018, Bitcoin was around April of 2018. Bitcoin was 8,000. Well, it was 8,000 cities. I think it was about $1,000 then. That is when I got exposed to it. I was like, oh, we don't have too much money now. And that about that time, I was trying to put together a team of to build a company in agriculture, in event management. So we're discussing, should we put money in this thing or not? About 8,000 cities. That's about, at that time, it was about $1,000. So we could never have predicted that we'll have, we didn't do it. We could never have predicted that we'll have become millionaires just 3 years down the line. But that's in the past. That was an interesting one. The fact that he basically said, I'm not going to confront the government frontally. I'm going to do something by the side. I'm going to navigate the space. I'm going to be in hiding until this becomes the dominant thing. And today, people are talking about CBD, central digital currencies in several nations, regulation, this and that. That's a powerful example of strategically rebelling against the status quo. So I'm going to segue into what caught my attention with your post. And I like your passion is so authentic, so consistent, verbally and in written form. You wrote about Ghana, Kenya, and Nigeria, and about the fact that a lot of issues around funding, equity funding among African countries, and the dichotomy or the diversity of these countries. So I wanted to dig a little bit into that in terms of what you think around equity funding in these countries, the differences, the nuances, what needs to change.
Okay, so thank you very much for that, Mr. Kenneth. About in terms of equity funding in these various countries, the truth remains that in Africa, there are three biggest ecosystems in Africa. Three biggest tech ecosystems in Africa. That's Nigerian tech ecosystem, the Kenyan tech ecosystem, and the South African tech ecosystem. There are other ecosystems that are actually gradually evolving, such as Ghana, Ethiopia. Egypt is also a big tech ecosystem as well. But other ecosystems that are evolving are Ghana, Uganda, Rwanda is evolving every day. Rwanda is evolving. Then Botswana and Namibia, they are actually doing a lot. Like their ecosystem is evolving. So that is it. So in terms of equity funding, Nigeria normally Nigeria normally has the highest foreign direct investment in Africa every year. But in 2024, it was quite lower, and in 2025, it's quite amazingly lower as well, which shows that there are a lot of things that need to be done in the Nigerian tech ecosystem, and probably regulatory uncertainty is one of the things. Insecurities and other things. A lot of startups have left Nigeria. Shoprite was sold. Shoprite was sold. There are other companies that have actually left Nigeria as
I
well.
think Jumia
Then
left some years ago too. No?
yes, then no, Jumia did not leave. It was Jumia food delivery service that left. Jumia delivery,
Okay.
Jumia ride that left. But Jumia itself is still operating. The e-commerce platform itself is still operating in Nigeria. So all of that, which shows that a lot of things need to be worked on in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Now, but that does not stop Nigeria from being a giant of Africa in terms of foreign direct investment. We are still doing very well. Most of the startups gaining prominence in Africa globally today, they are from Nigeria actually. Starting
Yeah.
from Flutterwave to Paystack to Moneypoint to Kuda Bank to Opay, we have a lot of them, mostly fintech, and all of that. But now, in terms of equity funding, Ghana, Kenya normally has a lot of equity funding as well, just like South Africa. But Ghana, let me focus on Ghana in my speech. Ghana is amazingly low. The reason is because first of all is their geographical location. Their
Okay.
geographical location. Or should I say their geographical size, not location. Their geographical size. Ghana is a very small country. I think Nigeria is 3 times bigger than Ghana. That is it. Nigeria is 3 times bigger than Ghana. Nigeria is big, first of all. Now, that's one thing. So, investors sometimes, when they want to invest in Ghana, they'll be like, okay, Ghana's population is way small. And what's the potential of this startup growing to yield us the actual profit we are looking for? Getting our
Mm.
return on investment by investors, yeah, this thing. What is the potential? And so far, when they rate the size, and they'll be like, okay, aside from the size, now look at, okay, what's the potential of this startup expanding from Ghana, expanding outside of Ghana to other places in Africa. And this
Mhm.
is where the problem comes in. Most Ghanaian startup founders, they don't pitch from a global mindset.
Okay.
They
Mm.
pitch from a smaller niche mindset. They don't pitch as Pan-African,
Mm.
just like the way Nigeria's, Kenya, and South African startups pitch. They pitch as, if you see a Nigerian founder pitch for you, you'll be like, "Are you sure this guy is going to achieve this thing?" We are building the Amazon of Africa. We are going to be
Yeah.
expanding to 36 countries in the next 3 to 5 years. I'm just
And
giving
it's
an example.
believable. It's believable.
It's believable and it's achievable. It's
Mm.
achievable, but what is the metrics? How are you going to achieve this? That is where you start seeing flaws.
Mm.
Ghanaian
Mm.
founders are too sincere. And I love the fact that Ghanaian founders, yes,
And shouldn't they be?
yes, they are very sincere, and I love that fact. It's one thing to be truthful to yourself, but
Mm.
sometimes being too much of a sincere founder can actually cripple the expansion of your innovation. People don't
Mm.
love truth, but that doesn't mean you should lie all the time. But you
Mhm.
should pass out metrics, and you should come up with a picture that is achievable. But the
Mm.
picture must be pan-African, global, but it's achievable, and but it's achievable, it's believable, and the metrics should be there that this thing can is workable. You shouldn't lie
Mm.
to them, but at the same
Mm.
time, don't paint so much of a sincere picture of yourself that you look too small to
Mm.
investors. You look too
So
small to investors.
in essence, you want them to focus on the statistics that promotes their intent.
Exactly. On the
Okay.
statistics, but they should also look beyond the data, because I'm a
Mm.
believer of data, but I always analyze beyond data as well. They should also look
Okay.
beyond data, but they should focus more on statistics in pitching to these investors. And they should
Mm.
also show proof of traction as well.
Mhm.
Proof of traction, and what is their total addressable market size, the TMA. They should also show
Yeah.
it as well. So, but Ghanaian founders are too sincere, and that is why you barely hear Ghanaian founders making name in Africa like that. Most startups you see who are making name in Africa are from Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa. You hear companies like Safaricom, companies like MTN, companies like Flutterwave, companies like Kuda, Moneypoint, and a lot of things like that. That is the thing. So because of that, sometimes founders prefer putting funding into matured ecosystems already. Into
You
mash
mean
into
investors?
investors prefer investing into matured ecosystems like Nigeria, because they believe that these ecosystems are already matured. These
Mm.
ecosystems, they don't just build because they are just trying to solve immediate problem, but they are building to scale globally. They are
Mhm.
building the next Amazon of Africa. They are building the next Alibaba of Africa. They are positioning themselves as the Silicon Valley kind of startups that investors should be looking out to.
Mhm.
And so, because of
Wow.
that, they will rather put their investment in that system, regardless of security challenges or regulatory uncertainties. I will tell you that despite regulatory uncertainties, investors are still putting in money into the ecosystem. In as far as the investment is quite lower than before, than 2 years ago, it's quite lower than 2 years ago. But for them to still be bringing such huge investment, it signals trust, investors trust in our ecosystem.
Mm. So they
And that,
see the opportunity and they're willing to take the risk
they are
because the
willing to
reward is likely to be greater, much greater than the risk.
exactly. And moreover, they see that and moreover, the ecosystem that is really booming mostly is the fintech. Is
Hmm.
fintech in particular. In Africa, fintech. I wonder why fintech is booming in as far as everyday people make transactions. But for me, I feel that ecosystem is being overhyped. I don't know.
Hmm.
Who are they
Okay.
selling? That's the first question. Who are they selling?
Yeah, that's a good one. Who are
Most
they
fintech
selling?
in Africa, most fintech in Africa, they'll just come up and be like, okay, you'll see a fintech that was just founded 2 years ago. They'll just come out and announce that we made $2 billion in transaction.